just delighted that you're all here, and I'm really quite honoured that when I proposed this particular day to Edinburgh University, my expectation was a few people might turn up, and that all of you have turned up. And I have to say, this is a very important audience. I'm absolutely honoured and delighted. Professor Matthew Head of King's College, of the music department, has very kindly offered to act as our MC for the day. We would love to create a real debate and discussion. That's really what this is all about. And I've asked my speakers, Grant McCaig, Christina Jansen, Brett Payne, Richard Fox, Peter Taylor, given them each a short brief on the subject of the day, which is crafting the UK artisan silversmith. And I'll spend a moment explaining a little bit about that. In the audience today, I have to say, have a remarkable audience. Prime Warden Timothy Schroeder, who is an eminent author and has written a great number of books on silver, many of which, thank you, I quote in my dissertation, plagiarism at its best. Then we have past Prime Warden Grant MacDonald, thank you for coming. John Andrew has recently brought out his book on recent modern silversmithing, and I was very fortunate to be asked to write the foreword to that. I have to say, I hadn't planned this joke, but I was having a tough time in one particular supervisor meeting, and they thrust this book into my face and said, "Have you read this then?" And I said, "Well, so happens I have." And they said, "Well, have you written anything about it then?" And I said, "Well, so happens I have." And they said, "Well, what have you written?" I went, "The foreword." So I thought, just occasionally 10-0 up. And I have three supervisors who are rigorous, to say the least. One from the business school of Edinburgh, one from the jewellery and silversmithing department, who should be here today at some point, Stephen Bottomley. And a third, which is Dr. Grant McCaig, Dr. Martin Craig, sorry, who is Mr. Rigorous and doesn't allow anyone to get away with anything. If you write, several people have said, he will put a comment, who, and what did they say? And they don't allow you to get away with anything. The speakers will cover the elements of training, education, manufacturing, sales and marketing of contemporary silversmithing. And I have to say that I make no apology that two of the speakers, Richard Fox and Peter Taylor, are extremely involved in the Goldsmiths Company. As my research has carried on, I've realised the centrality and the importance of the Goldsmiths Company, and I really make no apology for making it quite a central part of my research. After the first year, one has to produce a shortish dissertation, 5,000 words, and do a 15-minute presentation. And it's pass or fail. If you don't come up to the standard, they don't let you through to the second year. So this is a nervous time for many of the PhDs. Quite a few don't get accepted, actually. They tend to kick people out on the basis that you don't have a PhD, you don't have a unique piece of knowledge to give. So you have to come up with something half decent, and I put it into this short document, and it's at the back for any of you that want it. I wouldn't say it's the world's greatest read. It's quite dry for what it is. I've covered craft as a subject, and I've covered success as a subject, because crafting the UK artisan silversmith is a problem around how do we understand success and how do we create it. And my whole PhD journey started with sitting on a number of committees and sitting on a number of bodies where I found that the level of knowledge was not profound. And I wanted to create a document which gave people the basics of really, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and this is perhaps how we get there. The other reason that I come to this is that I am really, for a great deal of time, my wife and I, maybe 20, 30 years, have been in great awe of the skills level in the UK of silversmithing. Silversmithing, and our particular love is enamelling. And to come and see the wonderful work that these people are producing is really quite something. And over time, we've visited workshops, we've got to know the people, we've collected, and it's such a joy to be involved in this small industry. There's a great deal of goodwill within the industry, and there is also, unfortunately, a certain amount of overlap and a certain amount of misplaced resource. And part of the job that I wanted to do in this 3 years of doing a PhD is to try to document where the resource comes from and where it ought to go to. I've tried to understand craftsmanship and craftspeople, and the motivators are not what one would normally expect. And I've written a piece in this that contrasts with other industries. And the other industries, the motivators are very highly materialistic, they're money-based. This is not the case with silversmithing. This is a vocation, it's an industry whereby it can take 10,000 hours, about 5 years, just to get the basics right. And then it takes a further 10,000 hours of improving and specialising in a particular part of the industry. And most people tend to know that they are not going to become millionaires when they start on this road. And you start to have to look at what are these people trying to achieve, and why are they doing what they're doing. And I wanted to try to make sure that the supporting parts of the industry supported those people in the relevant way. The industry has actually been through a quite amazing period since the 1970s. And many people, quite hidden away, there are a number of companies that were quietly getting on with it in the background that very few people knew about. And this was because the oil boom from 1973 onwards created huge demand for British silversmithing. This was really quite profound. And very considerable amounts of silversmithing were made in particularly the southeast of England and were exported immediately to the Middle and Far East. And nobody got to see these pieces, and nobody got to really understand what was going on. And when I've spoken about it in the past, there was one particular journalist who thought I was absolutely wrong and that I shouldn't be talking about this. But what was happening was that it was being outsourced to large numbers of workshops in the UK, and workshops in the UK were prospering through this, and it created a skills base which really, in the end, was second to none. And the problem with these pieces were, and I've got a picture, I should have brought it, of a Chinook helicopter, which was probably 3 or 4 feet wide, on a base which had 2 Sony Walkmen in it. And a company called McCarty built this amazing piece of kit. And at the press of a button, the Chinook helicopter would rise up 2 or 3 feet, and the Sony Walkman would make the noise of a Chinook taking off. And you thought, this is quite extraordinary, this piece. It sold for £500,000 to somebody who probably owned a few Chinook helicopters. And this was used to great effect at the Basel Fair one year when McCarty, who built it, stood opposite a French company who were doing similar work. And each and every time a good client came to the French stand, they would hit the button, the Chinook would go, and the client would walk over and go, oh, that's really interesting. And in the end, the French got quite upset. In parallel, the universities were producing some really remarkable people, quite separate to the work that was going on for export. And in parallel, particularly Royal College of Art were producing men like Michael Lloyd, Malcolm Appleby, and these are world-class craftsmen. I was at Malcolm Appleby's workshop a couple of weeks ago, and he showed me the guns that he's making at the moment. He's engraving, and they're for the De Beers family in South Africa, De Beers family, and each gun will sell for over £100,000, and they are just remarkable to the level of microscopic engraving. So we have an amazing industry. We don't shout about it enough, and today is an opportunity to work out and to say, how do we do it?
Okay, thanks, Gordon. Certainly, if the PhD doesn't work out, I think we'd all agree Gordon will have a future in after-dinner speeches and motivational talks, but I'm sure it will. And it's very interesting that the oil connection's already been raised. There's many complex issues at stake. Just to reiterate, we are really hoping that you will engage today, listen carefully, and really contribute, because it's not a ceremonial occasion, so we're not looking for it to be that one-sided.